Hello, and welcome to another episode of Top 5 here on the MacGuffin. I'm Ben.
And I'm Ed.
And we are here tonight to discuss our top 5 science fiction films. And to start off, we'd just like to preface a few little things before we get into our lists. I first would like to say that I have excluded from my top 5 both Star Trek and Star Wars. And not that I don't think that either of them deserve a place in my top 5. They both have films that definitely do, and that's just it. But they're all series. They're, a whole bunch of movies unto themselves. I think they're kind of unstated, or I should say stated classics, and therefore I'd like to kind of just move on to the standalone top 5 science fiction film.
And I second him on that, and I even went one further because this list gave me headaches in trying to narrow my focus. But part of it is a big genre thing in my head. Like, for instance, take a movie like Alien. Well, is it a horror movie? Is it a science fiction movie? Well, technically it's both. So I've decided to do like a top 5 of championing movies that I just wanted to talk about. And kind of went reverse time through the year. So you'll see it as it goes along. All right. Why don't you start with yours?
I'll start with my number 5, and actually we are looking at it right now on the screen. Metropolis is going to be my number 5 pick for top science fiction films. It's pretty much the godfather of science fiction films. As far as I know, I can't really think of too many or any science fiction films just off the top of my head.
Journey to the Moon might have been the only one before.
Oh yeah, I guess you're probably right about that. But it really did kind of set the standard for where science fiction films went after that. It's just so genius in its approach, the style that it, adapted, the story it chooses to tell. It really, captures what science fiction is about. That, while it's a story about an android, and in a dystopian type of future, it really uses science fiction to get at the hearts of humanity and what we're about.
Very influential. People still reference it today. Yeah, excellent pick.
Indeed.
My number 5, kind of getting on this theme of going reverse through the years, would be The Day the Earth Stood Still. And I'm talking about the original, not that Keanu Reeves stuff. Klaatu Barada Nikto. While everybody remembers Gort and the big robot, and you got to remember that this was during that era of Earth versus the aliens from Mars, 50s B schlocky era of science fiction movies. Yet this movie has a really strong message about anti-nuclear proliferation. I'm going to screw up that word. And it is extremely well shot.
It is.
I think it's an excellent movie, and I still enjoy watching it all the time.
Indeed, it is an excellent film. Moving on, I guess, then, to my number 4. I would go with a actually rather new film, and I think I'm throwing this on this list because I honestly feel it's a modern-day classic, something that was kind of almost an instant classic in a way, and I would like to herald it as such and hope that, this film will be considered an all-time classic science fiction film as the years go on, and that would be Children of Men. The movie just accomplishes things in science fiction that very few modern-day science fiction films do. It not only tackles issues that are very prevalent to us now and where we're headed as a society, it also employed techniques that definitely are not used very much nowadays. Lots of long shots, long takes. There's that amazing action sequence that takes place about halfway, third or so through the film, where they're in the car and the car gets attacked. And
I'm gonna have to hang up my geek card here. This is one of the ones I haven't seen. I know.
We almost need to stop this video right now and just make you go watch it in order to consider having a further conversation.
I understand that it's a terrific movie, and it's one I definitely want to see, but
man. It'll blow your mind. It's got some amazing things, and the techniques alone in this film are definitely make it worth watching. And then on top of it, you've got great acting by
Clive Owen.
Yeah, Clive Owen, Julianne Moore. Thank you. I can't believe I blanked on her name right there. Anyways, moving on.
Yeah, well, I definitely will watch it. So, like, going again through the years, my next one on my championing list would be Forbidden Planet. And the reason for this is, aside from, again, a great gem in the middle of kind of an era of schlocky horror, or schlocky science fiction movies. Starred the now departed Leslie Nielsen and Anne Francis in a science fiction adaptation of The Tempest by Shakespeare. And the special effects in that movie, I honestly think that's where kind of the modern era of special effects were born. I mean, we look at, there are obviously some bigger examples of it just a few years later, but Forbidden Planet really was that monster that comes through the power fence that's kind of the id monster is kind of spectacular still.
Yes.
And I honestly, I'll stand behind that movie. I think it's terrific.
I'll agree with you on that. That's a very fine film. I guess we're moving on to my number 3. I picked the Russian Andrei Tartakovsky film, Solaris. Solaris is literally one of my favorite movies ever, not just one of my favorite science fiction films.
Super long.
It is super long, but I think it's perfectly paced. I honestly think that there's not a moment of that film that is inappropriately paced. I think that the film needs to progress in such a manner in order for the audience to experience the movie the way Tartakovsky wanted you to. I keep saying Tartakovsky. I meant Tartakovsky.
Not the Powerpuff Girls.
Yeah, I'm getting two people confused, but I believe that the movie is paced deliberately and shot deliberately for the audience to experience it in such a way. It really does what science fiction is supposed to do yet again, and not just wow us with spectacle or say, hey, I'm going to set it in space and call it science fiction.
It's about something.
It's truly a science fiction film, and it's really about the human condition, the way we deal with relationships, and how those relationships affect ourselves.
Thoughtful choice. My number 3, moving up through the years, I made it to the 80s this time, with one that a lot of people forget about, Brother from Another Planet.
Oh, yeah.
Directed by John Sayles, and stars Joe Morton in what I think is, I honestly think it's one of his best performances, and people forget actually what a good actor he is.
He's usually, subjugated to like the secondary role, the
getting killed
actor.
in Terminator 2.
Yeah, exactly, right? Or the chief police in Speed, I believe.
Exactly. Yeah, but his performance really carries that movie. It's kind of a parable about immigration. He comes to Ellis Island at one point and feels the pain of the immigrants that have been there before him. I think it's
obviously a racial subtext going on in there as well.
I think it's for a movie made for $5 or however much it's. I mean, it's definitely low budget, but I think it's a terrific movie.
It is very much a terrific movie. Nice pick. For my number 2, I guess this is kind of like the most overstated classic in science fiction, but it definitely needs to be there. It's 2001. There's just really, I think, not much I can say about 2001 that a million other film scholars have treaded ground on before me. But the fact is that it's such a genius film in that it introduces so many concepts to it, but the best one obviously is evolution, and not just the physical evolution of humanity, but our emotional and mental evolution, the evolution of use of tools and how the tools have affected our condition.
The fact that Hal is the character in the movie with the most personality, and he's a machine,
and he's hands down one of the best villains of all time.
Absolutely. I will 2001. If I were doing a list of top 5 science fiction, like try and keep it honest, it would be on my list. It's probably better than anything I've picked. It's just I couldn't get over myself. That's all. But total props to that choice. My number 2 moving up through probably the 90s. I've gotten to the 90s now. It's kind of an unsung movie, or less talked about lately, is Gattaca.
Oh, yes.
And I honestly think that one's terrific because it extrapolates a lot on where we seem to be headed.
Deals with cloning.
Yeah, exactly, and just genetic predispositions.
Yeah.
I know that Children of Men is in that same realm of dealing with health issues, and
it deals with the consequences of genetic altering in a way.
Right, and the criticism I've heard of Gattaca is they're Uma Thurman and Jude Law or actually I think Jude Law is terrific in it, but Uma Thurman and Ethan Hawke are a little distant in it. I actually feel their performances function much the same way that the performances in 2001 do, in that they're showing kind of the washed out lack of humanity left in the average citizen.
Interesting. Actually, to expand upon that, then that attitude of where a performance lends itself to the character would lend itself then to my number one, which is Blade Runner.
Again, would make my list if I was doing this different.
Yep. Blade Runner is not just my number one science fiction film, but definitely probably, my number 2 or 3 film of all time.
Wake up, time to die.
Yeah, Blade Runner. Obviously it's a cult classic. People love it. I mean, it's grown beyond, I guess, the status of cult classic. I love Harrison Ford's performance in it. Like, to expand upon what we were just getting at, is that he really comes across in this film like he was bored. I know he was sick during a lot of the shooting of the movie. I know that there was complications between him and Ridley Scott. I know there was a lot of friction on set, which lended itself to his performance. But all of that lends itself to a character that is worthy of being in this story, that asks the question, is our main character and the very thing that he's hunting down? Is he a replicant? And I mean, obviously, from the director's cut version to the final cut version, it answers that question. I mean, more or less, with the whole sequence of the unicorn.
Right. I again can't argue with you. And also, Metropolis kind of ties in with Blade Runner.
Oh,
There's
yes.
a lot of a lot of visual cues that Blade Runner steals from this movie.
Indeed.
So my number one, again, just moving up through the years, is actually I'm going to champion something that just came out last year, kind of underrepresented. Never Let Me Go.
Oh.
Which
I keep hearing fantastic things about.
Exactly. It was so underrated, and I think a lot of people I didn't realize until I walked into the theater that it was a science fiction film. I really don't, if you haven't seen it, I really don't want to tell you why it's a science fiction movie other than it is. And it is based on characters and relationships, and it had some of the best performances in the theater.
Have you seen the original film? I mean, it's not really original, but there is the movie Parts.
No, I haven't.
Oh, yes. It's a late 70s film. I think MST3K actually did a version, an episode of it. But from what I understand, Never Let Me Go is more or less like the same story that this movie Parts is.
Well, what I love so much about this movie is that there's some broader implications for society that you have to fill in. It makes you do a lot of work.
Oh, interesting.
And I anything that makes you think, I can appreciate.
Indeed.
So, with that...
That's it, yeah. Those are our top 5 science fiction films.
If you loved them or hate them, let us know.
Please. At MacGuffinPodcast.com. Thank you.
Thanks.